Hi, welcome back to my studio. Today we're going to be talking about composition and about center of interest. Now these are topics that I have covered in other videos that I've done, but today we're going to look detailed at these two things and how incorporating an intentional focus on your center of interest and your composition can help to improve your painting in any facet. So you can see here that I have drawn in the lines of third for the rule of thirds, where you section off your painting surface into thirds both horizontally and vertically. I don't normally do this. In fact, this is the first time I've ever done it on a large painting like this. But I wanted to do it just to show you kind of some of the techniques and some of the rules that go along into making a good composition, because they rest upon these 4 points right here. Okay, those points are visually pleasing. So when you're drafting a composition, your center of interest needs to revolve around one of these 4 points. Now there are a few different compositional styles that you can choose from, and there's not really a rule that says any one is better than another, but I want to give you just some to think about that are fairly simple but really nice to work with. And the reason why I don't often draw these lines when I paint is that I like to paint more off of feel. And so what I'm thinking of as I'm putting a composition together is balance. So I'm actually thinking of it in the terms of a teeter-totter. So if you've got a teeter-totter here and the fulcrum's right there in the middle, how am I keeping that balanced? How is that weighted? So if I put a large mass on the outside of the teeter-totter here, and then a small mass here, what's going to happen? This is going to drop down, right? It's not balanced. So to fix that in a composition, you've got your teeter-totter here, and you've still got the same sized objects. You've got a smaller one out here on the edge, but to avoid it dropping here, you can either put a smaller one out here, but that's not very interesting, but you can take this bigger one and move it closer to the fulcrum, and anybody who knows physics knows what that's going to do. Okay, and so now compositionally that is weighted correctly. And so a lot of times, instead of drawing out my rule of thirds, what I tend to do is just kind of step back and stare. Artists do a lot of staring. I step back and I stare at my painting and I see if it feels balanced to me. If it looks to me like one side is heavier than the other, then I know I've got a problem and I've got to move some things around. So sometimes when I'm painting and I am coming up with a composition, I will abstractly add my elements first, because that gives me a sense of the weight of everything. And if I add them in abstractly, then I'm not married to any drawing. I'm not feeling like I've put a lot of effort in and then I've got to go back and change things, because that's something that we struggle with. Especially in portrait work, you draw out the face, you even paint a little bit on it, and then you realize that something is askew and you feel like you have to delete all that work you put in. Well, if you focus on painting as just a series of refinements, it tends to take away that risk a little bit and help you get over that worry that you're going to have to go back and change something. And so a lot of times I'll pick a composition and then I will kind of just get a bunch of thinner with a little bit of color on it, and I'll play around with what that's going to look like. So if my center of interest is here, I can just scrub in kind of a shape there and say it's like a barn, because it's going to be a barn, and then you've got trees around it, and you're just kind of not worried about any individual shape, you're just worried about block shapes. And then say you've got some mountains, and I might change the color just a little bit for this so I can tell the two apart. But then you've got mountains that come up in here. And so I'm being very quick. I'm using mostly thinner with just a little bit of paint to get these blocked in here. So I'm blocked in with my main shapes being this tree here and this barn here. And it feels that I've got the biggest peak over here and I've got the smaller peaks this way. And so it's feeling like it's heavy on this side. And so looking at my picture, there is a secondary hill in there. And I'm grabbing just whatever color is convenient. But it's got a secondary hill that comes up here. So I'm going to add that shape in and see what that does to the composition. So it's still feeling a little bit heavy over on this side. And if this were a teeter-totter, and the fulcrum's right here, what I'm going to need to do to fix that is bring in something here. Now my picture that I'm working from doesn't have anything there. But that's the perk of being an artist, is you can pick and choose what you put in and what you don't. And an easy thing to add to a landscape is just some sort of shape of trees. Smaller than this, got to make sure it's smaller, or it's going to counterweigh too much. But now you can see that that kind of balances things out. And so I've got my center of interest sitting on this intersection right here, so I'm following the rule of thirds. I've got the teeter-totter right here, and so I've got my main bigger object closer to the fulcrum, and then out here I've got another shape that is just setting off the balance of the piece, so that way it doesn't feel too heavy on one side. And so this is my first step when I'm composing a composition that So this is my first step in creating a composition, making sure that everything is balanced. And now I know that when I come in and I draw in these items, that I'm not going to have to wipe them down and start over because of their placement. I am now assured that as I stand back and look at it, that it is balanced, and I might tweak things here or there as I go, but overall, it's a nice composition. So my next step is to draw in the details of my painting, and then that way, once everything's drawn in, I can check to see if everything still looks good compositionally, and I still haven't put a lot of paint down on the canvas. So if I do need to change things, it's just a simple wipe down with some paint thinner, and I can do that. And so I've sped this up so you don't have to watch the entire monotony of me drawing every line. Alright, so just a couple of the things that I've done compositionally. Now that I've drawn in the main shapes of my painting, some things that I've done that are important to a composition and to a center of interest, which is this barn here. That's where I want the eye to go. So not only do I have it balanced, but I've drawn in some shapes and I've modified a few of them from my picture to lead the viewer to the center of interest. So what I have here in front is just a plain brown field. One, I'm not going to paint it a brown field. I want this to take on more of a spring look. And so it's going to have just the beginning of some hay growing up, maybe a lighter yellow to greenish tint to it. But what I've done is, instead of making it come across the whole bottom of the painting and just being a big block shape that is going to stop your eye from progression, I have angled it just like this. Now it becomes this shape that brings your eye up to your center of interest. You start down here and your eye wants to follow that shape, and it brings it right here. Now through this shape that's coming this way, I'm going to bring up some poppies, some bright colors that are going to lead us up through this shape into this field, which should guide us up into the center of interest. Here I've placed this not only to balance, but to keep your eye from escaping the painting this way. And the hills here have some tree parts and some bald parts, and I've made the parts that are treeless kind of into this shape that comes down here and leads us back to our center of interest, where on this side they kind of block us from exiting the painting once again. So everything in this painting is going to be leading us to this barn, and supporting that as the center of interest to our piece. So now I'm going to finish blocking in the painting. I'm not worried too much about anything except value and shape at this point. I will still go back and finish it, but not in this video. So I've sped it up again. Enjoy it, and I'll even throw in a little music. Alright, so there you have it. This is my overall composition. This painting is blocked in, ready for the finishing stage to go through and refine everything, but these are just its rough shapes and values. And so yeah, this has hopefully helped you learn how to put a composition together. Thanks for watching.